Biker kicks dogs for fun. Unaware, Jason Statham is the owner. The roar of the motorcycle echoed through the quiet suburban street, the deep rumble cutting through the evening air like a warning. The rider, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a black leather jacket, grinned as he revved the engine, his dark sunglasses hiding any hint of decency in his expression. He wasn't just riding for the thrill. He was on the lookout for something, or rather, someone, to mess with. And tonight, his twisted sense of fun had a new target. A small dog trotted across the pavement near a row of parked cars, its fluffy tail wagging as it sniffed the ground. It was just a regular little pup. Oblivious to the danger rolling its way, the biker's grin widened. He leaned to the side, boot extended just enough to make contact. A sharp yelp pierced the air as the poor dog tumbled to the ground, rolling over itself in confusion and pain. The biker laughed, shaking his head as if he had just pulled off a harmless prank. But what he didn't know, what he never even thought to check, was that this wasn't just any dog. This dog had an owner, and not just any owner. Jason Statham, man who had spent years training his body, perfecting his craft, and taking down the bad guys, both on screen and in real life. A man who didn't just act tough, he was tough. And above all else, he had a soft spot for his dog. The biker had no idea what was coming. A few blocks away, in a sleek black car, parked outside a cafe, Jason Statham was enjoying a rare moment of peace. He was known for his high-octane roles, his gravity-defying stunts, and his signature, no-nonsense attitude. But away from the cameras, he was just a man who loved his dog. And right now, that dog should have been waiting outside, tail wagging, happy to see him. Instead, his ears picked up a sound that made his stomach twist. A yelp, a sound he recognized instantly. His dog. Jason's eyes flicked to the street. The cafe's outdoor diners barely noticed as he pushed back his chair, his movements sharp, controlled. Years of instinct kicked in. He scanned the area, searching, his gaze landing on a biker in the distance, laughing to himself as he sped off. And then, there it was, his dog, stumbling to its feet, shaking in confusion. Something inside Jason Statham snapped. His usual calm, collected demeanor disappeared in an instant. His jaw tightened, his fist clenched, and his pulse pounded with a fury that even he rarely felt. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't a script. This was real. Jason strode toward his dog, crouching down, his hand running gently over its fur, checking for any injuries. The dog whined but seemed unharmed, physically at least. But Jason didn't let out a breath of relief just yet. No, not yet. He lifted his head, eyes locking onto the direction the biker had gone. He wasn't the kind of man who let things slide. And if this guy thought he could get away with hurting an innocent dog for fun, he had another thing coming. Jason stood up, rolling his shoulders, the familiar tension settling into his muscles. The chase was on. The biker, still completely unaware of what he had just set in motion, sped through the streets, enjoying the rush. He had no clue that Jason Statham, one of the most formidable action stars in Hollywood, a man who had fought off entire gangs on screen and trained with real-life fighters, was now on his tail. Jason slipped into his car, his movements quick, efficient. He didn't need to guess where the biker was heading. Guys like that always thought they were untouchable, always moving from one cheap thrill to the next. He tightened his grip on the wheel, his jaw set. This wasn't over, not even close, and the biker? He was about to learn a lesson he'd never forget. The city lights flickered in the side mirrors as Jason Statham navigated through the streets, his focus locked on the road ahead. The adrenaline that usually kicked in during high-speed chase scenes was now running through his veins for real. But this wasn't a film set. There were no cameras, no second takes. This was personal. The biker, completely oblivious to the storm, heading his way, weaved through traffic like he owned the streets. To him, kicking that dog was just another meaningless act, something to laugh about later. He had done worse before, messing with people for no reason, cutting off cars just to see them swerve, playing little power games with anyone too weak to fight back. It made him feel in control, invincible. But tonight, he had picked the wrong target. Jason's fingers tapped against the steering wheel, his mind working fast. He couldn't just speed after the guy, recklessly. That would put others in danger. And Jason wasn't that kind of man. He had spent years perfecting precision, knowing when to strike and when to hold back. This had to be done right. He watched the biker pull up to a gas station, swinging a leg off his motorcycle like he had all the time in the world. Jason eased his car into the lot a few spaces away, keeping his movements natural. His dog, now resting on the passenger seat, let out a soft whimper. Jason ran a calming hand over its head, his silent promise clear. "Stay here. I'll handle this." The biker stretched, rolling his shoulders as he walked inside the gas station. Jason stepped out of his car, his presence controlled, unreadable. Years of dealing with people like this had taught him that confrontation wasn't always about throwing punches. It was about knowing exactly when to apply pressure. Inside the gas station, the biker strolled toward the fridge, grabbing a drink, completely at ease. He smirked at the cashier, tossing a few bills on the counter like he was doing the world a favor by paying. The store was nearly empty, the fluorescent lights humming above them. And then, as he turned, he saw Jason. At first, he didn't recognize him. Just another guy standing near the shelves, casually looking at a row of protein bars. But something about the way Jason stood, the stillness, the quiet presence, made him pause. Jason took his time, finally turning his head, letting the biker get a good look at him. Recognition dawned slowly, creeping into the biker's face like a delayed reaction to a bad decision. His lips parted slightly, his body tensing before he forced a cocky grin back into place. "Hey man," he said, tilting his head. "You look kinda familiar." Jason said nothing. He just took a step forward, closing the space between them with measured control. The biker, still holding onto his bravado, gave a chuckle, trying to mask the shift in his own energy. "You a fan or something?" he joked, popping open his drink. "Didn't take you for the autograph type." Jason's gaze didn't waver. He could see it now. The small signs, the way the biker's hand flexed around the bottle, the way his feet shifted slightly, like he was calculating an exit. Jason had seen it before. Guys who acted like they had all the power, only to fold. The moment someone stronger stepped into their space. "I don't need an autograph," Jason finally said, his voice calm, low. "I need an answer." The biker frowned, glancing around like he was checking if anyone was watching. "What are you talking about, mate?" Jason took another step closer. The dog, for a brief second, something flickered in the biker's eyes. Then, just as quickly, he scoffed, shaking his head. "Oh, that. Come on, man. It was just a dumb mutt. Didn't even hit it that hard." Jason's jaw tightened. The biker must have sensed the shift in the air because his cocky grin faltered. He cleared his throat, glancing at the door. "Look, man, I don't know what your deal is, but Jason moved. Not aggressively, not recklessly. Just enough to block the biker's path. Just enough to make his presence feel inescapable. The biker stiffened. Jason leaned in slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. You hurt an innocent animal for fun. That's not just a bad habit. That's a problem. The biker swallowed, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. He wasn't dealing with some random guy who just wanted an apology. He was dealing with Jason Statham, and Jason wasn't someone you brushed off. For the first time, the biker didn't have a joke ready. No smart comeback, no fake laughter, just silence. And then Jason took a step back, giving him just enough space to breathe, but not enough to run. Here's what's gonna happen, Jason continued, his voice controlled, but carrying an undeniable weight. You're gonna think real hard about what you did, and then you're gonna make it right. The biker blinked. What do you mean, make it right? Jason didn't answer right away. Instead, he held the biker's gaze for another long second before turning and walking toward the exit. The tension in the room stretching so thick it was almost suffocating. And just as the biker let out a breath, just as he thought maybe, just maybe, he was off the hook, Jason stopped at the door and glanced back. You'll know soon enough, Jason said, his tone carrying a finality that sent a chill down the biker's spine. Then without another word, he walked out, disappearing into the night. The biker stood there, gripping his drink so tightly, his knuckles went white. For the first time in a long time, he felt something he wasn't used to feeling: regret. And the worst part, he had no idea what Jason Statham had planned next. The biker stood frozen in the gas station, his mind racing. Jason Statham's words echoed in his head, sinking in deeper with every second. You'll know soon enough. What did that mean? Was he in danger? Was Jason going to come after him? His heart pounded as he glanced out the window, half expecting to see Jason still there, watching him. But the parking lot was empty. His motorcycle sat untouched, the quiet street stretching beyond it. For a moment, the biker let out a shaky breath, convincing himself that it was over. Maybe Jason just wanted to scare him. Maybe that was the end of it. He tossed his drink in the trash and walked outside, rubbing his hands together, as if shaking off the tension. He swung a leg over his bike, ready to leave this weird encounter behind him. But as he reached for his helmet, his hand paused. A small note was taped to the seat. It was simple, just 5 words. I know where you live. The biker's stomach twisted. His fingers tightened around the paper, the weight of it heavier than it should have been. He looked around again, but the streets remained empty. It didn't matter. He felt exposed, like Jason's presence still lingered, even if he wasn't there. He shoved the note in his pocket, started his bike, and sped off. His usual reckless confidence was gone. He wasn't weaving through traffic, wasn't revving the engine to show off. He just wanted to get home, to lock the door and push this whole thing out of his mind. By the time he reached his small apartment on the outskirts of the city, his nerves were shot. He parked his bike in the alley behind the building and hurried inside, locking the door behind him. He paced the room, running a hand through his hair. Get a grip, he muttered to himself. He's just messing with you. But was he? Jason Statham wasn't just some guy who made empty threats. He had that look, that presence, like a man who didn't need to raise his voice to be dangerous. And the fact that he hadn't made a move yet, that was even worse. The waiting, the unknown, it was eating the biker alive. A sudden knock on the door made him jump. His breath caught in his throat. He stood there, staring at the door like it might explode. Another knock, firm, unhurried. He swallowed hard. Who is it? Silence. He took a shaky step closer, then another. His hand hovered over the doorknob. He wasn't sure why he was opening it. Curiosity, fear, or maybe just the need to end this suspense. But when he pulled the door open, there, was no one there. Instead, sitting on the doorstep, was Jason Statham's dog, the same dog he had kicked just hours ago. The biker's chest tightened. The dog looked up at him, its soft brown eyes watching, tail curled slightly in uncertainty. No aggression, no fear, just waiting. And then, something even stranger. A leash, neatly coiled beside the dog. A message. The biker stood there staring at the dog, his mind spinning. Jason wasn't here. There were no threats, no fists flying. Just this, an opportunity. He knew what it meant. He could ignore it, close the door, pretend none of this ever happened. Or he could do the one thing Jason was waiting for. Do the right thing. For the first time in a long time, the biker hesitated for the right reasons. His hands, which had spent years grabbing, pushing, breaking things apart, slowly reached for the leash instead. His fingers closed around it, and as he clipped it onto the dog's collar, the animal didn't flinch, didn't pull away. It trusted, and somehow, that was the part that shook him the most. As he stepped outside, the night air was cool, still. The city hummed in the distance, but for once, the biker wasn't chasing after trouble. He wasn't looking for his next cheap thrill. He was just walking a dog, and somewhere Jason Statham was watching. Not from the shadows, not in anger, but with a knowing smirk. Because sometimes real consequences weren't about revenge. They were about change.